Apologies to all.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for all the members of the committee who have joined us tonight. My name is Nosa Rama. I'm the Vice Chair of the Land Use, Landmarks, and Planning Committee. Today is January 11, 2023, and the meeting will start at 6:49 p.m. as we have just achieved quorum. I want to thank you all for your continued patience, and we will get the meeting started. Thank you so much. So I'm going to review some ground rules so that we're all on the same page. No one may speak until granted the floor. Community Board 11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information such as an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. With that, we're going to call the meeting to order at 6:49. Originally was when we reached quorum. It is now 6:51. Angel, could you do the roll call?
Certainly. Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Devin Cronshaw.
Present.
Kenneth Crouch.
Present.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Jessica Morris. Nelsa Orama.
Present.
Present.
Thank you both. Beverly Pabon.
Present.
Vinny Torres. Jason Villanova is excused. Andy Vasquez. You have quorum.
Thank you so much, Angel. With that, we're going to move ahead. As you see, we have the agenda. So we're going to do the adoption of the agenda, and we're going to continue to move forward. We're also going to do the adoption of the committee minutes. I hope that everyone on this meeting had the opportunity to read the committee minutes. If there's anyone who has any issues, Jessica, I will call you right now. Please let us know, and I will be calling Jessica right now. Jessica?
Thank you,
Elliott.
Nelsa. Sorry, I'm just listening to a CB10 Parks meeting as well. The meeting minutes didn't appear to have any notes from the presentations and discussion, so I just wanted to make sure that was the final version of that before we approve it.
Okay. Angel, is this the final version of the minutes?
Those are the draft minutes. We did not get summaries from the.
Okay. So let me ask, so if this is the draft, are we expecting any summaries? Because if not, then I will move forward with the draft agenda. Let me call on Jessica Morris. Jessica Morris?
I just have a point of procedure kind of question. I know when I do minutes, I have a habit of noting who they were submitted by at the end, in that there is a lot of discretion in how much information is submitted and what is not submitted. So I know that's a common practice, though it's not necessarily required. I'm not sure where the minutes came from, and I did also note that broad strokes, big points from the discussion were not included as well. I'm not sure where that leaves us, but I wanted to echo the statement by the other board member.
Okay, Angel, so then I don't know who did the minutes.
I can speak to that.
Thank you, Angel.
Yeah, so I sent a notice to all board members, to all board leadership months ago, because we continue to struggle to get minutes submitted on time. And we were running afoul of the open meetings law requirement. So in order to meet the requirements of open meetings law, the staff has been preparing draft minutes with the bare minimum information that's required to meet the requirements of OML. And that's being forwarded to committee chairs for them to then turn around and include the summaries. When chairs do provide that, we of course share it. When they don't, we have the draft. So we're in compliance with OML, but we have minutes that don't have summaries and are, y'all can reach your own conclusions. And in terms of noting who prepared them, it isn't a requirement. You know, some people do, some people don't. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Angel. So this will be a point for discussion at the new business. Everyone who I would suggest, because I want to thank the staff for ensuring that we are compliant with the open meetings law, because as you know, CB11 has had many committees that are stellar at providing detailed minutes. And then we've had committees that for whatever reason are not as fruitful in supplying their minutes or have fallen woefully behind. So I want to echo what I just saw in the chat. I want to thank the CB11 staff under the direction of Angel to ensure that we are in compliance. So I will recommend that in new business, we discuss how we're going to make sure that we add more detail, as this is the Land Use, Landmarks and Planning Committee. So for us especially, it is important that we provide as much detail as possible without oversaturating anyone in reading. The recordings are available for anyone who would like to see a replay of the meeting. So going forward, Jason and I and the committee, we will find a way to make sure that we add to the minutes as appropriate, so that we can make sure that the information we disseminate gives information if someone can't see the video. With that said, I've made notations. I've taken comments down. Both Jessicas, thank you so much for your comments. Unless there is unless there's more of an objection, then I would like to see about adopting these minutes. If not, then we will not adopt these minutes, and I will take this back to Jason to add more detail. With that said, Jessica, you have your hand up?
No, I was going to object to adopting the minutes.
Okay. Beverly?
Yes, I was actually going to ask whether or not if you had to adopt the minutes in a draft form, but we already got a not.
Right. So what
Okay.
I'm going to do, as opposed to having the committee meet, I'm just going to table the minutes. I will speak to Jason regarding adding. The staff should not be the ones that are responsible for the minutes. Each committee should be generating the minutes, and so we will ensure that we do a better job, as this reflects not on the staff, but on us. So any details that we want to add, we will add. So we're going to postpone the adoption of these minutes. We're going to add more summaries and detail, and this will come up with the minutes from this meeting for adoption on the next meeting. Is there any objection to what I suggested? No? Okay, so we're going to move forward. Thank you so much. All right, let me look at my agenda. Okay, so there's an announcement. There's announcements. Do you have the agenda there? I'll read it out loud. The citywide statement of needs for fiscal years 2024 and 2025 is now available on the city planning's website. The SON is one of the many tools that help drive effective and equitable siting decisions for city agencies, including new facilities and the relocation, expansion, consolidation, or closure of existing facilities. The primary purpose of this document is to inform communities of the city's facility needs and the specific criteria for selecting the locations of these facilities. More information and a direct data download is also available on the city planning's website. So you have that link there. And community boards may comment on the facilities listed in the statement of district needs within 90 days of receipt of the publication. The comment period ends on April 3rd, 2023. And that's the citywide statement of needs, not the district needs. Beverly?
I just want to get clarification. Did we adopt adopt the agenda also? Was that?
We adopted the agenda, but we did not adopt the minutes. Waiting to put more detail in, and that will come up for the next committee meeting. We will vote on these minutes, the adoption of these minutes from December, in addition to the adoption of January minutes in the February meeting. Thank you, Beverly. Okay. We're going to now move. Is there any question on that announcement? Okay, if there are no questions, we are going to move on to the informational updates. Angel, do you have any informational updates you would like to share before I put it to the committee?
So I don't have an info update, but I did want to mention that the next committee meeting date is February 8th. And I think a couple of committee members wanted to announce something to the committee insofar as an event that looking to organize to go to together.
Absolutely. Okay, so who's the first person who's going to raise their hand to make their announcement? And if you see it before me, Angel, no, let's see. Angel, I don't see any hands. Am I missing them? Oh, Jessica Morris. Jessica?
I'm raising a hand on behalf of both myself, but also fellow committee member Beverly Pabon. Ms. Beverly, do you want me to speak to the invitation, or would you like to?
It's okay, Jessica. I appreciate it that you speak. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. So following on last month's note that Beverly made with regard to a redlining exhibit and interest in extending invitation to committee members to perhaps attend together an exhibit at Barnard College in West Harlem called Undesign the Red Line. Beverly and I have identified 2 potential dates that the exhibit is willing to host us to visit the exhibit in the evening at the end of January. Beverly had suggested that also including the Housing Committee and other Committee Board 11 members at large who may have interest in joining. So we're at present interested in doing a little bit of a scheduling poll to see if one day is better than the other for as many board members to attend as possible. So you'll receive some communication from Angel, I believe tomorrow, asking you to just indicate your availability. And from there, we will, Beverly will work with the exhibit to confirm that date, and then we will circle back and extend the invitation. Probably not more than an hour is needed, though it is a schlep across town, and we would of course perhaps set up a meeting point in East Harlem to travel together if that is convenient or of interest to others. And Beverly, I believe there's a little bit more about why this is an important opportunity to learn together about the legacy of redlining, not only in East Harlem, but more broadly. So hoping you will participate and that you will be available at the end of the month to engage. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that announcement. And Beverly and Jessica, thank you for your hard work on following this up. As I said prior, I attended many years ago the redlining exhibit when it was here in East Harlem, and it's well worth a visit. And I look forward to, once I know the dates, to revisit, because that's a really important part of our history and our legacy that continues today. And our children and all those who can should make themselves aware of the challenges that communities have had in trying to attain wealth, or housing, equitable housing, or ownership. So it's a really, really important exhibit. So I thank you both, and I look forward to finding out what the dates are so I can try to calendar that in. Are there any other announcements? Well, I have an announcement. I just want to remind those members whose applications are up this year, whose membership is up for Community Board 11, to please, if they are interested, to apply again so that they do not they do not exit the community board by not being aware that they're supposed to apply. So please keep in mind, if you are not sure, if your term ends in 2023 March, please contact the office so that we can confirm. You can also confirm that on the Manhattan Borough President's website, who usually has a list of the active members with the month and year that the term ends. So that's my informational update. If there are no others, I don't see any hands. We are going to move on to.
No, so I'm sorry. Beverly had her hand up, and I also wanted to add something.
Oh, Beverly, there you go. I'm sorry. I think I'm on a lag because I'm on Wi-Fi. Beverly?
Yes, a quick question in regards to the application to join the community board. This is my last year, so I'm doing my application now. I have to do it before March. But when would I know whether or not I've been, put back into the community board?
So
Is that right
Beverly,
away?
what you would do is you would submit your application before the deadline.
Uh-huh.
Just be aware that sometimes they extend the deadline, but we never assume they're going to extend the deadline. You will continue on the board until such time that new members are assigned. You
Okay.
will find out at the same time everybody else finds out, so there won't be a gap. Like, let's say the term is supposed to end in March. Traditionally, it's supposed to start in April. It never does. So you will continue on the board until such time that new members or yourself are reassigned. So there's never a loss of members because of the application phase.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
very much.
You're welcome. Angel?
Yeah, thanks. Just quickly jumping back to the redlining thing. If folks are wanting to do a little reading, there's two excellent books that I can recommend. One is The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. Fantastic history of that whole experience, and also a little bit more dense, for those who like dense reading, is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. Both are excellent reads.
Angel, can you put that in the chat?
No.
If not the chat, Nilsa, I was going to ask Angel to include it in the invitation that he
Oh,
sent.
okay. Okay.
I'll do both. I'll do both.
Thank you, District Manager Extraordinaire. Okay, so with that, any other Any other announcements? I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay, I see no hands and I hope I'm not in a lag again. So with that, we're going to move to the presentations and discussions section of our agenda. So the first discussion is the committee discussion on goals and accomplishments. So Jason and I, we spoke today, and you know, he wanted us to remind ourselves about the accomplishments that we had this year. You know, the committee weighed in on a lot of little, a lot of items that came before the committee. You all began strategic planning and creating more processes and protocols. For example, we've discussed last month and the month prior before that about adding a rider for any land use action on reneged agreements so that we can go on the record. And so those were at least two that we started talking about, and of course the tracker that we've discussed, and putting the items on the statement of district needs and making ourselves heard. So with that, you know, I'm going to open it up to the committee to discuss the goals and the accomplishments. And Jason also mentioned that goals of this year is the rolling action items list, so that we continue keeping track of the action items that the land use committee votes on, and the project tracker, which is a very, very important item. And the points of agreement follow-up through the mayor's office and other partners, building relationships with community agencies and other CBOs, both not-for-profit and for-profit. So those are some of the things that he and I discussed this afternoon. With that, I'm going to open it up to the committee for we can have a discussion on, you can jump in on goals, you can jump in on accomplishments that you feel. As you know, I'm a recent addition to this committee, so I can't really speak to everything that has been done, but as the chair, I know that this committee has worked, the former chair, I know that this committee worked really hard. So I will leave it up to the committee to tout its accomplishments and goals that they'd like to see considered for the upcoming year. Don't be shy, raise your hand. Jessica Morris.
Thank you, Nilsa.
Mhm.
One of the things that I think that's always been important in my mind, but not necessarily taken up as a goal by the committee, is a better understanding of the spatial concentration of the projects underway in our district. And there was just an article in the New York Times by Temple Grandin about visual thinkers and the benefits of visual thinking, relating it back to vocational education and how we're losing something by being all digital in our worlds now, and that young folks are missing some of those opportunities as well. I think to understand the potential implications of the land use actions that we have historically either approved or not been in favor of, and where they land and what their volume is. I did a little bit of an exercise in mapping and trying to wrap my head around it, specifically around the Park Avenue corridor and East 125th Street. But it's also happening, I think, around 103rd Street and in the southern part of the district. So as a goal, I would suggest that the committee, and I'm happy to support what needs to be supported in making good on this goal in the next year, but would encourage the committee to take up a better geospatial understanding of the projects underway in the district. And I know back, just to wrap up, in the throes of rezoning, we were all so familiar with that map that we saw time after time after time. That map is real. That's our neighborhood. That's where we live. And I think it's changed already, and it will continue to change. So I'd like to Angel, maybe there's anything left there to dust off, to start putting pins in it, really, and understand what those pins mean as far as new people, or as far as homes for people to maintain in our district in the next 5, 7, 10, 30 years. So I think that's on us now, and now is the time to really understand that before it, with the Second Avenue subway and all sorts of other development efforts, happens so much so that what we knew is unrecognizable. So now's the time to get a grip on it.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Mhm.
Would anyone else like to opine on potential goals for the land use landmarks committee? I will tell you that one goal that Jason and I also discussed is to activate the landmarks preservation portion of this committee. It's an important part of our community. Not enough. We have Landmark East Harlem, but for us to understand the importance of it and interact with groups that are the focus is to preserve. It is extremely important, as Jessica Morris alluded to in her goal of understanding how projects impact this community and what does it mean spatially. Preservation is key in our community. There's a lot of apartments that have been lost, homes that have been lost due to the lack of preservation. So that is one goal about activation of the preservation portion of the committee. In addition to planning, right? It seems like the committee has worked hard towards planning with the project tracker and things like that, ideas of what they'd like to do. But it's important that, as Jessica alluded to, that we understand what's going on, the implications of the votes that we take, the developments that come up, and what does that mean? And in terms of us seeing the shortfalls and the too much ofs, so that we can help weigh in on decisions in terms of land use planning. So that was something that was discussed as well by the chair and I today.
Nilsa, may I second that and give a recommendation to make that the top priority?
Okay.
And just to acknowledge that I think it's an implicit goal of the kind of educational process of engaging the redlining history as well, to understand that while our history may not look like beautiful buildings, it is because of a legacy of disinvestment in some respect. So that the way that we remember that history is inherently going to be different. Thank you for bringing that up. It's really important.
No, thank you. What you mentioned, right, in your opening statement and your goals was what prompted me to look at my notes to remind me that preservation is key, right? And we have some board members who have knowledge of preservation and actually have small grants from the state through their their neighborhood preservation programs, who can give information towards these efforts, as well as, you know, other resources that we could put together. But it's important that we educate ourselves, as you mentioned, Jessica, so that we become more of a force, right, in terms of community, not only community planning, but actually being that wall to help safeguard our community and just push the most positive and mitigate the most damaging aspects wherever we can. So thank you again, Jessica. You prodded me with your statements. Are there other goals that we would like to at least list? I think a goal for me is definitely to learn as much as I can about land use and how it impacts the other committees. As we always say that, you know, the committees all work together. We all should be synergistic, but understanding, right, that we're just the very first step. We're the raw material committee, right? And then we see it come up, and then it becomes a housing thing. But us definitely holding people accountable for what they say, and making sure that they come back to our committee to report is also a goal, right? That's part of the project tracker, getting people to come and letting us know, so that we can find out things in as much of real time as possible. Having reporting back is important. And I've seen that this has happened. ECF is a perfect opportunity, which I know we're going to discuss later on in the meeting, but asking the questions about what's going on in the projects and has gotten us real information that we would have not have really known if we didn't continue to ask those questions. So anybody else? Jessica Morris?
Nils, I just want to clarify, sorry, the rolling action item list.
Okay.
Is Jason has brought that up as a part of what we should carry forward. Is that correct? And I think implicit is that what are our rolling action items?
So to me, and I'm sure he'll explain it further, right? Because I'm not, you know, I can't really speak for him, but to me, a rolling action list would be, it's in tandem to me with the project tracker, but it's certain things that we're always going to keep on. But as things come up, right, we're going to add to them. To me, the project track, to me, it almost feels like the project track and the rolling items list is the same, almost the same thing. Because to me, every action that comes on is a rolling action, right? We vote on it. We're supposed to be keeping track of it. So when you mentioned, because don't forget, I'm the newbie here, right? When he mentioned the rolling action item list, for those members who were part of that discussion, or maybe Angel can clarify, what would you like to explain about what that discussion was? Like, what was your take on what a rolling action item was considered? Was anybody part of that when that was first brought up? Angel?
Why me? I'm here minding my business.
You know why? Because you're the best of
No,
all
no,
of us
no,
in
no,
terms
no,
of
no,
knowledge. No, in
no.
remembrance. I'm of a
No.
certain age.
No. I don't remember. What I think that the general idea is that since projects are coming and going, and it may grow stale after a while, we haven't had the discussion, we may lose sight of the the details of those projects, well, the projects overall, and then the details of those projects. So to have things on the agenda and have it as part of the conversations of the committee, to have them regularly on there so that we're doing that follow-up, they're front of mind. And we're checking in on the details of those projects, and as well as the status of those projects. Like, for example, the 126th Street Bus Depot project, right, which is this massive project that has been, pretty much silent. We have heard from EDC that, it's kind of on hold, but like, what does that mean? The East 125th Street Development Project, right, that 2-block project that has, so far delivered, a parcel and a half. There's still a significant amount of floor area there that has to be developed. That's been 20 years and counting. There's the, pardon me, the now former M11 sanitation garage on 99th Street. There's the property there owned by H&H, by Health and Hospitals. There's a commitment for the new garage that also included, community consultation on the future of that H&H property, right? So like, where is that? What is H&H thinking? Have they engaged with us? Have we engaged them? And I can go on and on and on, but I won't. But I think that was the general sense of it.
Okay, so Angel, let me ask a question. In terms of don't laugh. In terms of the rolling action list, if this was going to be kept on the agenda, does it seem like it would be, and Kenneth, I'll call you and just give me 1 second before I forget my train of thought. If you were going to keep track of this or put this on an agenda, in your opinion, would that be something that we would just maybe create an attachment to an agenda where, like, for each meeting, like, let's say today, if we added, I don't know, NOSA's, I don't know, development, where from today's meeting, we would just create a list, and on that list put like NOSA's development, blah, blah, on this date, so that the committee would have this every single meeting, but they will have that rolling list.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer for that, because
Okay.
I didn't come up with that term, so I don't know how
Okay.
they envision that looking.
Okay.
That was just my sense of what the intention was. I think it's a fairer thing to speak to Jason and for you
Okay.
all to speak as a committee and
Right.
figure out, how you want to move that forward, or how you want to,
Yeah.
operate that.
Yeah, I just figured that, maybe you had like some.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
Kenneth Crouch, you put your hand down. I'm still gonna call on you in case you changed your mind and wanted to still say something. Kenneth?
Sure. I think just in keeping with the first point you made, Nilsa, in terms of goals for the coming year and for our committee and for our community, one thing I am very, very thankful for the work of George James and just kind of clarifying and elucidating some of the things we've read, the ULIT process, some of these really complicated processes, and a lot of the stuff just would have been impossible to read, frankly, without his help. So I appreciate that. And I really look forward to, and we'll see if meetings laws change and we're able to meet in person, but I really look forward to us working with Jason and really clarifying what this action item list, or whatever we want to call it, will look like. Because I think it is so important to have a vision in mind in terms of how do we make our communities happier, healthier, safer. What are some things that can change the health outcomes of folks in our neighborhood? How can we preserve cultural institutions, but also ensure things like fresh food, all those things. So I'm really looking forward to working kind of more directly. I know as a new member, I haven't always had a chance to kind of put my feet out there, but I really do look forward to working in a more involved way in the coming new year. That's all. Thank you, Nils.
Thank you, Kenneth. Well, being a new member does not preclude you from having participated and giving thoughtful responses and comments. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for, just mentioning the fact that how you want to get out there. Yes, it's been a little bit, it's been different having community board meetings during COVID. As you see, we're still doing it. There's a different dynamic when we meet in person. And so, you know, we have to figure out that fine line. As you know, there's, you know, strains that are coming out and stuff like that. But, you know, I too miss that personal interaction. But we're slowly getting out there, and I look forward to meeting you, not just as a face on a screen, but meeting all the new members in person, because we all add to this community board, and I look forward to seeing us as a whole. So thank you so much, Kenneth. Does anybody else want to potentially mention a possible goal? Obviously, this will be more fine-tuned when Jason comes back, and probably in the next meeting. Beverly?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. Just to piggyback on what you said regarding the role in action and where it can probably go, if Angel can let us know whether it could be put on under old business and like A, B, C, D, and maybe that could be part where we can keep everything up front as to keep an eye on these items that we discussed in the past, to just make sure that, you know, it's going forward. It's always under old business until it's completed, and then probably taken off.
Okay. Thank you, Beverly. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So I don't see, oh, Jessica Elliott. Jessica?
Hi, sorry, I've been a little distracted. I just wanted, sorry if I missed this, but something I've been thinking about lately, especially right around my couple of blocks, there's been a lot of development that's been ongoing. And I don't know, I personally don't have any way of tracking that or understanding, what's going up, and non-ULURP action developments that just move forward. So I was hoping, if there was some way to understand that, along with our like vacant lots or buildings that, we have abandoned, that have, active storefronts on the ground level, but sort of boarded up, upper floors, just to anticipate, additional changes in the community. So not sure if that was brought up, but something I've been thinking about.
No, it was not brought up, or at least not in the way you brought it up. And so I just made a notation of it. Thank you so much, Jessica. With ULURP actions, it's easier for us to keep track, or at least, because they come in front of the committee and the community board. Non-ULURP actions, not so much, but we will, that's obviously why that's a goal, right? So we will discuss it with Jason and George and all the leadership that can assist, especially Angel, although he doesn't want me to say his name. So we can come up with how best we can do that, or what mechanisms we can put in, or what we can tap, what resources to try to get information for non-ULURP actions. Thank you, Jessica. Jessica Morris?
Thank you, Nilsa, and I promise this is my last point of input.
No, you don't have to promise that. No.
For this moment right now, I've got more to
Okay.
say, and new business, don't worry.
Okay.
But this morning, and in the past year, the Department of City Planning launched a tool called the Equitable Development Data Tool, which is meant to specifically provide an element of racial analysis to augment the environmental impact statements of developments that do require ULURP. It was voted into law with the passage of Intro 1572B fairly recently. And it's something that I don't know how it works, and I don't trust data unless I've had a chance to look at it. So if it's being used to say whether or not development has a significant impact on a community with regard to the potential for displacement or other impacts. It's something that I think as a land use and planning purview, we should have an understanding of that tool and how it's going to be used either for us, with us, by us, etc. So the equitable development data tool has been rolled out. I'm not sure if we have gotten an understanding of how to use it, if it impacts us or not, but it may be worth an inquiry into.
Thank you, Jessica. It definitely sounds like it's something that we should look into, not just only as a committee, but just for general knowledge as community members, and not just CB members, right? Just like community members, and to understand and to see how what's going on. If no data is completely reported, but at least to get an understanding of the data that's there, and two, to see how that tool can help inform currently what's coming up and what may be already in development. So thank you so much for that, Jessica. You see, this is why you have to continue participating. Beverly?
Yes, Jessica, I just want to know, where will someone have to go to get access to that type of data?
George James just put the link in the chat.
Oh, great. Thank
Let's
you,
see.
George.
There you go. He is our planner. He is awesome. Okay, so I would suggest that everyone like copy and paste that. I'm going to try to do that as well because I'm challenged. Any other goals? You don't have to give them to me tonight. It's something to think about. It'll probably be also discussed by Jason Chair Villanueva in the next meeting. So I made some notations. I want to thank you all for giving such thoughtful ideas and goals for the committee, or at least things to think about. And so with that, I'm curious about accomplishments, right? Like,
Nilsa, may I throw one more goal on the table?
go ahead,
Maybe.
Jessica.
And it has to do with ancillary space for Second Avenue subway development.
Yes. Go ahead.
I think our streetscapes are fragile in East Harlem because commerce is hard fought. There's not a lot of disposable income to go necessarily patronize even your favorite businesses. So our small businesses and the the corridor of Second Avenue is going to be vulnerable through the construction of the subway. But furthermore, I think in a way that's different than the 6th line, new regulations and codes require the presence of ancillary buildings, which have dead storefronts, essentially, dead street walls. And dead street walls throughout our Second Avenue corridor and thereabouts will really have an undue effect on a fragile ecosystem of small neighborhood scale businesses. So it's something that is in planning now. It has to be from an engineering perspective, and yet we have not heard anything about it necessarily. I don't think engineers thinking about tunnels and trains and all of the underpinning that they're going to need to do are quite yet thinking about what our streetscape is going to feel like down the line. So it's something that I would advocate for us to get a better understanding of. Ancillary space as a goal, ? But yes, I think it is important to plant the seeds of discussing and its effect on the future places along the Second Avenue subway.
Thank you. I noted that as well. Thank you, Jessica, for that. in the past, we've discussed ancillary space and ancillary buildings and the possibility of those kind of spaces being converted or for affordable housing. So I noted that because we should have an idea of how these do affect and will affect our community, and especially because of the streetscape. So thank you so much. I am going to just ask the committee if they can think of accomplishments that they would like me to make a notation of in terms for tonight's discussion. If not, if you can't think of anything off the top of your head, as I had mentioned some before, the project tracker, the rolling items list, at least the idea, the creation of those ideas and the positions that have been taken, we can then make sure that we discuss that next month when Chair Villanueva is here. Unless anyone has an accomplishment that they'd like me to note right now. Jessica?
Part of my tardiness tonight, but I believe we achieved quorum at every meeting of the Land Use Committee in 2022.
That's really important. And you made sure we achieved quorum tonight. So thank you so much. Okay. One accomplishment that I want to mention is the fact that this committee, George James is always a tremendous resource. And I'm not saying that George knows how much I think of him and always have. But the fact that this committee is leaning on him for more information, and that George, as always, is willing to give information in bites that we can all understand as lay people, and his presentations and his graphs and his drawings and all that. I will tell you that I know that George works with a lot of community boards, but he was ours and he's still ours. And I don't care that he works with other people, he's like ours. And so he has allowed Community Board 11, him and Angel Biscayne. I know Angel don't want me to mention him, but the fact that we have such top-notch professionals on our board and supporting our board and staffing and assisting speaks to the fact that we can opine and we can react. And so we're very fortunate that we have that accomplished, right? That road work, that we have that in place. And so that is an accomplishment, not a little larger than the committee, but the CB11 itself, that we have such accomplished people that will assist us and have assisted us in trying to make sure that we are as informed as we need to be, that we think about the things in the way that we can ask the most efficient questions, and that we present ourselves well. So that is an accomplishment that that bodes well for all of us. So I want to thank you both for being accomplished and helping us accomplish. Anybody else can feel free to jump in. If not, then the vice chair will, the chair will have to list more accomplishments at the next meeting. If anyone else has anything else they'd like to add. If not, then I will let you all think about the hard work you've done in the last term, and you'll have to catch up and let Chair Villanueva know. So I see no hands. So with that, we are going to move on to old business. Correct, Angel? Because I'm reading the agenda. There we go. So the old business, as you see, if you have your agenda in front of you, and I'll read the I'll read the slide. It's the continued discussion on the planned DCF project at the School of Co-op Tech, which is the Cooperative Technical Education on East 96th Street. Angel listed some responses there.
I can summarize this. No, so-
Thank you. That'll be great.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to read them, but I did want to summarize kind of the lead up to it. So last month, when we were having the conversation with ECF in Avalon Bay, there was reference made a number of times to a list of questions that had been submitted to ECF in preparation for that update. They had responded that they hadn't received those questions. So we sent them again, and we did get responses to the list subsequently. So the questions were pretty much in 4 subject areas. So the first, as you see here, was with regards to the quote unquote 2 schools site, the building to be erected on First Avenue. And the response was that given the feedback from the community board at the last meeting on 12/14, they will not be moving the schools off the project site. They're in the process of refining the approved project and are willing to come back to the committee at a later date to answer questions. So my question, and I think our question on that particular point remains, if the building for the 2 schools is still part of the project as it was approved back in 2017, who's paying for the project? That is still unanswered. Is the idea was that the idea always with ECF projects is that the developer is responsible for assuming the cost of the construction of the school facility, in this case, school facilities. So that's unclear, because there was some reference made to perhaps the SCA, the School Construction Authority, taking on that cost. So we still are owed, we still need clarification at some point from ECF and SCA as to who's going to be footing the bill for the 2 schools building. That's not the name of it, but I can't think of anything else to call it. Then a related question had to do with a potential site on 3rd Avenue that they were considering, but since they've moved off the idea of building off site, this this location is no longer under discussion. Third, as it relates to the Marx Brothers playground and the replacement parkland, I omitted the rest of the question just so they could fit on the slide, but did include their response. Quote, "This is not an ECF's purview or decision. Parks and the city will decide where and when replacement will be designated." As you'll recall, and I'll forward this to the committee members, the fuller list. You'll recall the issue with, well, many issues, but the one issue with the replacement parkland is that after all the discussion that was had on the back and forth between whether it was a playground or park, they landed on park. And since the Marx Brothers was alienated and moved, alienated and no longer considered a park under zoning terms, that park space has to be replaced elsewhere in the district. And what we had heard was that the new park being constructed at 125th Street and the East River, the so-called Harlem Greenway Link, hopefully in the future called Richard Toussaint Park, was being counted as the new park. However, the conclusion of the litigation, the back and forth with regards to the playground park, wasn't concluded until 2019. And the commitment to provide the Harlem Greenway Link Park was made as part of the East Harlem rezoning in 2017. In essence, counting that park as fulfilling the requirements of the Marx Brothers displacement would be, double dipping. So that also still needs to be clarified with the city and the Parks Department. And then lastly, We asked if the SCA DOE have any plans at this time for the existing Park East School building, which will be vacated when the two schools building is built and Park East moves there. And their response is simply not at this time. That's all we got.
Thank you, Angel. And thank you for mentioning the Greenway and Richard Toussaint Park. As Jessica Elliott, current chair of the Parks Committee, is aware, and under the former chair, Francis Mastroda, and ad nauseum, our fight to get the park to be named Richard Toussaint Way and Richard Toussaint Park. For them to say, or for them to think that it's okay for something that had originally been thought of prior to this project, that should fulfill, just shows another example of this community and city agencies trying to get over. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Should not be, it is definitely double dipping, and it's just lazy and just a way to not fulfill what they need to do. So thank you, Angel, for bringing that up.
I forgot one thing. I'm sorry.
And you're going to go back to you so you can respond what you forgot. Take it away, Angel.
No. Just briefly, but important. I think we all agree. On the question of the two schools and who's picking up the cost, if it ends up being that the city is picking up the cost and not the developer, then that, and I think this was mentioned last month, begs the question, then why does a development still need to be that size? Because that was the justification, that the cost for all three schools and the park, et cetera, required this much building. So if the developer is no longer on the hook for all those commitments, then why do they need that much? It's still a question that has to be answered. That was it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Angel. And not only that, right? If the city should cover the cost of the schools, however it does, are one of our current projects going to be underfunded? Is it going to be put on the shelf because now the community insisted on the developer to fulfill what they had agreed to, and that's why they got all the perks that they did and the sizes you just mentioned, Angel? But what are we going to lose in that process when they decide that they only have a certain amount of money and we are put to have to decide, well, what's more important? Two schools that a developer is going to build, or the project that you wanted? And then if you say the project that was originally being funded, then we agree that the schools should not be built. So it's like a catch-22. My concern is that we don't lose anything that is on the road to being fulfilled for this community when money is pulled out from one of our projects, our proposed projects, or some monies that have been earmarked for another project, and that gets pushed into this project. So that sort of goes and said with your double dipping kind of thing.
Exactly. And we have to keep the heat on, for lack of a better word, because it's a project, back to this rolling items action list and keeping track of all the projects we have. There's a number of different dominoes here involved with this project, right? So we have to keep on them with regards to this. We have to, work with our, government partners, the council member, the borough president, et cetera, whoever can help, to make sure that what is promised is delivered. And also, not just directly as it relates to this project, but also kind of one step removed, right? So there's the question of what happens to the space currently being occupied by Central Park East, but also what happens to the space currently occupied by the Heritage School in the Julio de Burgos building, right? Which is envisioned for the creation of this Julia de Burgos Cultural Center, right? A whole building committed to, arts and culture, what the design, all the details of that are, TBD, but also a conversation for us to be kind of thinking about, but who's going to start thinking about that now when the school's still there? Like, we still have to resolve the school issue before we can even think about being handed keys to resolve the issue at the Julia. So, I want to encourage us to continue to be, focused on this and not let it fall off. Otherwise, a project that is anticipated could very quickly switch to in development. And once somebody brings out construction stuff and, oh, we can't make any changes, oh, we can't do any changes, oh, we can't do anything, we hear that whole refrain and then we're kind of stuck. And I don't think that the community deserves in any way, shape, or form to be stuck on this one.
I agree, Angel. And when you said that,
First rant of the year. There you go.
no, it's okay. We should always be lucky to have some intelligent rants. When you mentioned that, and with the rolling track and that, and the Julia de Burgos, it just reminded me of the late Edwin Marcial, who had tried for a long time to get his Walk of Fame done in the community. It may be that that might be a project for the Julia de Burgos in terms of space, maybe creating a Hall of Fame as opposed to a Walk of Fame that could be a repository of what he had wanted to do at that time. I know that the councilwoman at that time, Melissa Mark Viverito, had put some money toward it, and I know that there was a lot of discussion on how to make it happen, but that might be something, if there's space, something to revisit. Jessica Morris?
Pardon me, I feel it's a little bit rude to have my hand up when others are speaking, but it keeps order, so I do it. So don't feel the pressure and speak your piece. Angel, thank you for your input, and Nilsa, to acknowledge Edwin. Edwin was the first Community Board 11 member to introduce himself and welcome me after attending meetings, which is a special person and a special place and time. So pardon me. I want to dissent. I know I'm speaking from a quasi-professional perspective. You know me, I know you and your passion for the community, and I know this may make me unpopular, or I'm trying to keep an open mind, because to say, I mean, I think the response from ECF to the first question to sort of shut down possibilities that would deliver sooner. I worry because when you're as pressed as this project is to deliver, you make sacrifices in quality, and you don't necessarily have the most optimum outcomes because you're trying to make all the ends meet. So I don't want the community to shoot themselves in the foot by keeping, pardon me, I have a neighbor here, by keeping an old, keeping a long-standing position that shuts down the potential for a solution to arise. And I hear you, and I know that I represent an alternative perspective, but I do just want to caution that saying, no, we don't want any other options. We want what we said we wanted, and that's what we want. It I mean, I think there was some interest in creative problem solving to deliver on the schools faster and perhaps better. That was above and beyond. And that was not motivated by trying to, cheat the community or double dip. So I just, I'm not sure that that's the right tack to take when we have someone who's working on our behalf in earnest.
Thank you, Jessica, for that. I just want to clarify that this community has very limited space. We have been looking for a long time to site a dual garage, right? A multiple garage. When anyone comes to this community and pitches a project of the magnitude that it did, and adds back and requests buy-in from the community, goes as far as to bring young people in to help sway a committee so that they can vote. And if you didn't vote a certain way, you are keeping education from these young people, not realizing that we are not as naive and understood that those children, those teenagers that were brought to us, would not be part of the educational process at the new schools, that at the most it would be their siblings or others, right? But the importance of the community to have those schools. With the schools that have been, I've been to Heritage. Actually, my youngest son attended Heritage High School. And so I know the constraints there extremely well. And Park East has put up with so much, right? So when you add to a project those schools and the developer willingly accepts those projects, to then come back to a community and then say, oh, by the way, we cannot seem to do this because of the cost, but we are going to talk to others to get a commitment. And we need to find space and ask the community board if we can assist in finding space. I think it's a little disingenuous to expect that we would get a solution for the lack of schools faster, just because identifiable space is difficult. So I don't get the sense, and I'm just speaking for myself, I don't think that the community board or myself or anyone who has dissenting opinions are taking a position as hardliners or as people who don't want to see an alternative. I think what we're finally doing is saying promises said, promises should be kept. This community has a lot of projects that were promised in one iteration and we get them in another. And so I applaud that Jennifer is trying to find alternatives. And should not funding be found, maybe those alternatives are a possibility. However, I think that the way the project made sure or tried to have community buy-in for those schools and the reasons why and the size and the zoning and the amendments and everything, that should have been brought to our attention longer ago than this past May. And so it will be interesting to see how this goes forward. But I will not, as a lifelong community resident here, as the former chair of 4 years for CB11, as members of multiple committees, including vice chairing housing at one point, I see the importance of people keeping their commitments. And if they can't keep their commitments, then it begs the question, if your project goes on as intended without the schools that you promised, but yet you continue, you will have positive outcomes at some point. What about our children? So that's just my viewpoint. And with that, I'm going to call Beverly, and then I'm going to call George James. Beverly?
May I just make a clarification, please,
Sure.
Nelson, before you move on?
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity to serve with you and hear that feedback. I just want to acknowledge that the response in the first point is based on your statement. And I think that that's significant.
Right, that they added back to schools, right? That's important, right? Because they weren't going to add the schools back. And we as a committee felt that, you know, promises said, promises should be kept. I'm always concerned in solutions being found without input from the community board, right? If we hadn't pressed for information, we wouldn't have known that someone else was approached to fund a project that was supposed to be funded by the developer. What will we lose in the process if the city funds that project for the private development with SCA? And what are we willing to lose in the, you know, in the interim?
I'm just concerned about the optics of it, that the statement from Jennifer, given the feedback by the CB at our last meeting on 12/14, we will not pursue moving the schools off the project site.
Which is good, because that's what they originally said. The schools were supposed to be in the project site. They added the schools so that they can get concessions. That was the point of the schools. When they were discussed with the council member who encouraged them to add this, because the school is in our district, right? It's on the cusp. They embraced that. They said yes. They got the concessions. They came to the board, they made their case, the board supported it. Originally at, I think it was 60 something floors, and then the Manhattan Borough president got them to bring it down. So for the community board to remind them that this was something that they said they were going to do, honestly, I'm not worried about the optics. I think that the optics on our community side will be like the community board is fighting for schools for our children, which were intended as part of that project. There's a lot going on at that project. There's been feedback that doesn't look good, that doesn't sound good on the community side, right? So promises said, promises should be kept. That was part of their original project. They're building the co-op tech school because it's a co-op tech property. They're building affordable housing because they want to build market housing. You want to do that? You want the original, everything that was given to you? Then move with the same project. Go back to the original project, which goes back to what you originally want. If not, the question, I agree with Angel. The question begs to be asked. If you're not going by the original project, if you're not going to give the two schools like was part of the original project, then why all the concessions and the changes that were given for the project, why should that be untouched? Because then everything should be on the table. Not only moving the two schools, but downsizing the size of the project, downsizing the scope. All of that then should be able to be questioned. Because if you can move one part of the project and you can revise one part of the project, you should be able to revise any part of the project. and what concessions is the developer giving? I'm not talking about SCA now, trying to do the schools. I'm talking about the developer itself. How is the developer a good partner for the community if the developer doesn't have to buy in on anything? That's the question, right? Whether it's a good question, whether it's a bad question, it's just something to consider. Beverly?
Yes, I just want to double back regarding the park area. I was reading an article regarding the Bobby Wagner walkway, and I wanted to know whether or not part of that walkway is being considered, if they needed to have more space to redo the Marx Brothers Park. Is that all part of one development?
Beverly, the Bobby Wagner Way, isn't that on the FDR Drive off the
Yes.
East River? So that
Yes.
is not part of the Marx Brothers footprint.
Okay, so when y'all was speaking about the parkland being replaced, it wouldn't be replaced as part of, and that or considered to be replaced into that part of the area because it goes from 90th Street to 125th Street.
No, what Angel prefaced was the Harlem Greenway project, 127th, I believe, and the Richard Toussaint, the park that's supposed to be developed there as part of the East Harlem Points of Agreement that the Community Board 11 has been pushing for years to be named Richard Toussaint Park and Richard Toussaint Way, the lead into the park. That is a totally different area. That's on the upper part of our community.
Past 125th Street.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. George?
Thank you, Nilsa.
Mhm.
Okay, so I just wanted to make 2 points. One is supporting your comment about, well, if SEA is going to pay for these schools, then what are they not paying for, right? Because normally, it's a zero-sum game. They only have so much money. If they're going to put in 100 million or whatever it is here at these schools, it's going to come from somewhere else. And it may be in East Harlem, it may be somewhere else, right? It may be another place, but SCA and most agencies operate with these 5-year capital planning, and it's just like the thing that made me raise my eyebrows is just that it was thrown out. Oh, they're just going to do it. Like normally, it takes a lot more time and planning to have that kind of capital expenditure just come out of nowhere, especially during these times. So I think you're right to ask, it's a zero-sum game, that if they're paying for this here, that means they're not spending the money somewhere else. And then just in regards to the need for this, kind of supporting your point, Avalon Bay is not, Hope Community or Ascendant. They're a $25 billion publicly traded company, right? They spent, I just looked it up, they just spent over the past year $1 billion in dividends to their shareholders. This is not like the little local developer where you could plead poverty. I don't doubt that Avalon Bay regrets the deal that they signed on to. I have no doubt that this is not working out for them. But to say that, it's impossible for them as an organization is absurd, because this is a tiny bit of their portfolio, regardless of its profitability. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, George. I agree that when I brought up about the air, finding an alternate spaces, and I want to thank Jennifer for agreeing very quickly. Well, if you want the project, if that's what you want, if you want the project back, to put it back, and I was like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. That's what was promised to this community, and that's what should be kept. I do agree that in my opinion, I think there had to have been a discussion at some point. What happens if there's pushback, right? So there has to be, I guess, continued discussion, right, in terms of any funding that's going to come to those projects, and if they can't fund it, you know, why? Avalon Bays is a $1 billion corporation, and like I said, it's just very easy to shift projects, and it was just very easy to include them back, and I just, you know, I just don't think things happen like that. So I don't know if it was, you know, just you know, putting your finger in the water kind of thing and testing the temperature to see what kind of, how hot it was. And I'm hopeful that things will be resolved to the best of everyone, right? That we get the schools that are needed, that they're not 50 years down the line, that I get to see at least some kids, you know, seeing the school in about 7 years before I move on somewhere. Just because, and I think it also sets up the way the community wants to be treated, right? If we start making sure that there are explanations given that are rational, and that we ask the right questions, right? And that we come to the table, that we can help facilitate issues, that's a win-win for everyone. You know, like I said, I want to thank Jennifer for her presentation and being so agreeable. Now comes the hard part. Where's the money coming from? You know, is the community going to get shorted somewhere else, or another community? No community should get shorted, right? CB8 or anybody like that, right? Nobody should get shorted on this project. It's a project that is necessary, was part of the visioning of it, was part of the selling of it, and should still be included in it. So thank you, George, and everyone's comments in terms of what has been said here. So I'm going to see if there's anybody else who wants to participate in this discussion from the committee. I don't see anyone else. I do see Lo van der Valk. So I will call on this person and recognize, with the understanding that in us discussing the ECF project here, we just want to ensure that everything that was presented to this board, wherever possible, if it moves forward, is as was voted on. And if not, then as anything, we would want to see that as things get scaled down, that everything is considered for scaling. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Yeah, my name is Lo van der Valk. I'm president of Carnegie Hill Neighbors, which borders and actually goes into 97th and 98th Street in your catchment area, between 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue. We have been attending the Community Board 11 meetings on this project from the very start. So that goes back a long time, as many of you are aware. And also I want to say I've been so encouraged by your discussion about these issues. I think you've really dealt with it in great depth and with great understanding. And I also want to say that you know, we were part of the lawsuit that included 3 other well-recognized New York City entities, including the Municipal Art Society, Friends of the Upper East Side, and Civitas. And they would not have joined a lawsuit if they didn't think that it had merits. And the reason for the lawsuit was that initially, when this project was presented, it was argued that Marx Brothers was not a park, and that it would not cost the city anything. And in our lawsuit, which we lost, and we argued on two grounds: one, that it was a park, and two, that the process was not being properly followed, because if it was a park, it should have been acknowledged up front that that was a real possibility, and not just out of an abundance of caution thrown in. And but the city overrode us in the process, but they did, or the judge, but the judge did acknowledge that it was a park. And for that reason, when the alienation agreement had to be framed with the state legislature, it was section 3, a standard part of the alienation agreement in such cases was that the park had to be replaced at market value, either in some other park or in some other park improvement. So fast forward, I just want to say that as the years have gone by and the thing is dragged out, and when we saw that ECF was not going to honor its commitments, we were very upset. And we did propose some alternatives, but I don't think that they went far enough personally. And I'm just saying that outside of the coalition. And I want to just put a place marker in, and I would like you to be aware that we would like to propose an alternative which might meet some of the goals and on a good faith effort. And I hope to be able to present that in a few weeks, but I need the support of the coalition to do so. So I just want to thank you very much for the thorough discussion that you keep having on this. Very impressed because you're not getting involved in the technical details, but you keep at the larger picture. What was promised, what can be accomplished, and what is the cost. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I hope to speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van der Valk. You and your group on Civitas and all the other organizations that have joined in on the lawsuit, were quite passionate about what you felt and trying to bring attention to the concerns that you all had. And so as a community member, I want to thank you all for the work that you put in and trying to force fruitful discussions and coming up with different outcomes. Chair Villanueva is not here tonight, but I am assured that when you join our meetings and if we are having a conversation and discussion on points of interest to you, including this project, I assure you that after the committee weighs in, that you would be selected or public. It's important to get their viewpoints. So I want to thank you for joining us tonight and for adding your commentary to our discussion. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Does the committee have any other points that it would like to make, as this was just to give the committee a summary or some information? Thank you, Angel, for doing that, and for us to have a discussion. Obviously, this will be on our agenda. And so this will be a continued discussion, and as other things emerge, we will be aware of it, as well as the rest of the community board and the public at large. So with that said, Angel, if you don't have anything else you'd like to add, or if anyone else doesn't have anything to add, then I will move to new business. So I'm assuming there's nothing left to add. So I am moving to new business. Okay. I am opening up new business for anyone who would like to discuss new business? Obviously, we talked about the trackers and the continuing progression on that. And so I believe that as I was talking in the other part of the meeting, I don't know if it was Jessica Morris that you mentioned that there was an item you wanted to bring up in new business. I may be misremembering.
Yeah, I believe it was the ancillary space economic subway issue, and staying on that with regard to the timeline of project development there,
Okay.
which, you know, it fell into goals, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
You know, it's not pressing business, but I do
Okay.
think it's something that we should continue to keep tabs on.
Okay. Thank you,
Mhm.
Jessica. Is there anyone else who would like to bring up any new business? Angel, is there anything that you're aware of that we should bring up in new business?
No, I have nothing in hand.
Okay, so with that said,
Sorry, and also another point for
ahead,
follow-up. I
Jessica.
know we had tabled Ascendant's presentation from December. And I think that aligns with the goal to elevate landmarks as a priority in the committee. I understand they had some organizational personnel challenges in December, and I imagine that's probably still ongoing. So I just want to acknowledge that we have not yet heard from them, though the information is available if committee members have interest on Ascendant's website to do a preview, but to suggest that we continue to hope to hear from them as soon as they're ready to share that work back with us.
Thank you, Jessica. We will follow up with Ascendant to find out when they would be available to come and present.
They've reached out and they were not able to make it this month. They asked to be rescheduled for a future meeting
Okay,
when they are able to make it.
right. No, I knew about this month, but I mean like in the future, like, you know, before June, if they're available, because you know they're working on multiple projects.
They want to come and we want them to
Okay.
come. It's just a matter of having the staff for them to be able to come.
All right, so that'll work out. So we know that we will be seeing them at some point. And so then we can definitely pick their brains and get as much information. Thank you, Jessica, for pointing out that we can get information on Ascendant's website. So, you know, any members who, until such time that they come to present, please feel free to go on their website and become familiar with their multiple projects in this community. Is there anyone else who wants to add any new business? Seeing no hands, I am going to pass it off to our district manager, Angel Muscane, for the final roll call.
Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Devin Crenshaw,
Present.
Kenneth Crouch,
Present.
Jessica Elliott,
Present.
Jessica Morris,
Present.
Noso Rama,
Present.
Beverly Pabon,
Present.
Vinny's absent, Jason is excused, Candy's absent. You have quorum.
Thank you so much, Angel. And I want to thank every committee member who is here, and I want to thank the public for attending our meeting and for all those who opined and gave us their opinion. I want to thank you all. I look forward and thank you for putting up with me today as your chair of your meeting. So I thank you all for making it a pleasant experience. I want to wish you all a happy and healthy 2023. With love, with your loved ones, and good health. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:28 p.m. So I wish you all a very, very good night.